aftermath of World War II, everyone was talking about the awesome and terrifying capabilities of atomic power.
What really changed the climate was a speech given by President Eisenhower in December 1953 at the United Nations, which he called Atoms for Peace.
Atomic bombs today are more than 25 times as powerful as the weapons with which the atomic age dawned.
It began with a lot of gloom and doom, and then he circles around and ends with this beautiful, happy tale of how atomic energy is going to bring blessings and health and prosperity to the world.
This greatest of destructive forces can be developed into a great boon for the benefit of all mankind.
The president's speech was immediately transmitted to 74 overseas posts by the USIA press service before the communists could distort and misinterpret America's proposals.
Atoms for Peace quickly became internationalized.
At American embassies all over the world, the USIA campaign got underway.
The propaganda around Atoms for Peace included traveling exhibits where people could go and see little nuclear artifacts, and these exhibits would attract throngs of people around the world.
The exhibit in West Berlin was visited by 250,000 people, including thousands from the Soviet zone. In India, Prime Minister Nehru came to view the exhibit and shared the experience with thousands of his countrymen.
Of all the countries that were targeted for Atoms for Peace propaganda, none was more important to the American government than Japan.
On the first day of November 1955, the United States Atoms for Peace exhibition opened in Hibiya Park, Tokyo.
The United States sent exhibits to Japan. It promoted the work of Japanese scientists in atomic energy work. Atoms for Peace helped sort of send this message that, hey, we're the good guys. It sort of helped whitewash the bad odor created by Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
The general public was being encouraged to look on the bright side, so to speak, by demonstrating that there was this enthusiasm burgeoning all over the world.
Was it propaganda or was it policy? The answer is it was both. It was at the same time an effort to influence public perceptions, to change the way people talked about nuclear energy.
I voted against atomic energy because I thought it was the work of the devil. Now I know I was wrong.
And on the other hand, it was a serious, genuine initiative to spread what they saw as the benefits of atomic power throughout the world.
The Voice of America was beginning to give the world translations of the president's words in 43 languages.
The potential of civil nuclear power suddenly was seen as a global beacon of progress. Every country involved wanted to take part in the development of this new gleaming future of atomic energy.
Kernkraft war eine der Technologien, mit denen man sich unterschieden hat, ob man hochtechnologisches Land ist oder ob man eben mehr zum Durchschnitt gehört.
If you were a young scientist or engineer graduating college in the 1950s in the United States of America, you were in a pretty sweet place.
Possibly you could make an analogy to the dot-com boom in the 90s, but it's bigger than that. It's huge.
The scientists had stepped forward as the new wizards, the warlocks, the magicians, who were going to bring all these wonderful things to the future.
They were like inside this magical world. You know, the scientists that studied this were really fascinating people, and they were part of this very, very elite group of special people.
The British set up the first civil nuclear plant at Calder Hall in the UK.
Appropriately, for such a very important event, the Queen came to perform the ceremony of the big switch-on. A definite lead in the second industrial revolution has been taken by Britain.
The British government was triumphant at being the first nation to launch a nuclear power programme.
Britain saw itself as the pioneer of nuclear power. We were the first with a nuclear power station, and our technology led the world.
But others weren't far behind them.
La France entrera dans la production d'électricité d'origine nucléaire et se placera au rang des grandes nations atomiques avec les États-Unis, l'URSS et l'Angleterre.
Donc quand De Gaulle est arrivé au pouvoir après la Seconde Guerre mondiale, sa préoccupation était de rétablir la gloire de la France, la position de la France en tant que puissance.
Et donc dès octobre 1945, le général de Gaulle, par ordonnance, a créé le commissariat à l'énergie atomique.
Even if some slight deception was involved in explaining what these shiny new reactors were actually for.
The first nuclear power site in France was presented as a prototype for electricity generation, and that was what all the fanfare was about.
Voici dévoilés au public les aspects de cette réalisation qui fait entrer la France dans le cycle de l'utilisation industrielle de l'atome.
In reality, and from the very beginning, the Marcoux reactors were designed to optimize the production of weapons-grade plutonium.
Gold Hole wasn't a power reactor. Its purpose was to produce weapons-grade plutonium material. The electricity was a useful byproduct, and in fact that dial was not connected to the reactor at all.
Governments weren't the only ones spinning a positive atomic message. Private nuclear companies were getting in on the act too.
General Electric was really instrumental in this. They did a lot of work. They had a comic book, they had film strips, and it was all done with bright colors, with exciting little characters.
Let's start by meeting a leading authority on the subject, Dr. Atom.
The public's mood was galvanized by the new atomic power stations springing up around them.
The reactors actually became tourist attractions in and of themselves. At Marcoux, there was a lookout point where tourists could go and view models of the reactor and see the whole site.
Growing up in Essex and going for days out on the River Blackwater, I remember very well driving there along small country roads. But as I got close to Bradwell, the roads suddenly became very large and very impressive. And you could look along towards the mouth of the river and see this very clean, very efficient nuclear power station. It looked very modern. It looked the future.
But no one felt the thrill quite so much as those on the inside.
I felt proud to work at Bradwell. When I look back, I think, yeah, I was there, I did that.
We felt we were at the forefront of technology.
It wasn't only Bradwell, the country as a whole was raising their head up and saying, we can make it.
50 years has gone by since then, even had a lot of hair, and one of my jobs was to test materials for faults, defects, and used to climb inside the reactor building main structure, inside the ducts and everything, and test all of the welds.
Looking rather like a super version of a plastic Macintosh is a new suit designed for workers at Britain's atomic plants. Once you're inside and the zip's been fastened, all that remains is to pump in compressed air so that the wearer can breathe easily.
I used to be dressed up like a Michelin man with special clothing, with an umbilical cord supplying air to my body sort of thing, and for breathing, and also throat microphones, and then climb through every part of the reactor and the boilers, etc.
We were looked up to because people from coal plants used to come to us and say, my, isn't it clean? Yes. Isn't it wonderful, this clean environment you live in?
I could take you to an old coal-fired power station. We're doing exactly what Tony and I used to do. You'd come out black.
Across the pond, America's engineering giants were so enamoured with nuclear power, they were ready to bet their wallets on it.
What they did was to offer a fixed price or turnkey contract. All the utility had to do was to go to the reactor when it was built and turn the key and turn on the reactor. It seemed like there was no risk in building a nuclear power plant because the price was low, and the vendors, Westinghouse and General Electric, guaranteed that price.
And then comes the gold rush, where everybody in the electric utility business is suddenly deciding, wow, we need nuclear power too.
But not everyone was so enthusiastic.
I went down to Bodega by the sea.
There was a plan to build a reactor at Bodega Bay, California. Protests first started from local people who were just concerned about the view.
But then people began to do a certain amount of homework, and they began to get concerned by radioactivity released from the plant in normal operation.
The local fishermen were worried, would we be able to sell our fish? Will people be worried about the radioactivity of it?
There was also, more particularly, the possibility of an accident involving a nuclear plant, which might release a lot more radioactivity.
The most interesting stunt was they released a whole lot of balloons, and when they came down, they would have a little message on it saying this could be radioactivity from the reactors.
The public didn't, in fact, really know that there had already been a number of significant industrial accidents in nuclear installations in Canada, in Switzerland, in the US, and in the UK.
There was a very big fire at Windscale. I was never told. I discovered when I went to Japan, I was talking to the Japanese minister, and he said to me, how are you getting on with dealing with the consequences of the fire? And I said to my officials, what fire? Oh, we didn't want to bother you, Minister.
Bodega Bay actually persuaded the local electricity company to abandon the plant. And this was the first time that a nuclear proposal of this kind had actually failed because of opposition by the public. And it was going to be the first of many.
I remember when I first went to the States as a minister, I was told that they had a policy of 2,000 nuclear power stations by the year 2000. But the local opposition was so strong that they couldn't build them.
There were individual activists who were fighting individual plants around the country. And then Ralph Nader called a conference, the so-called Critical Mass Conference, that brought together 1,400 of these activists and kind of gave them a way to see, wow, we're not alone.
It was frustrating to deal with what I sometimes thought of as organized ignorance. And it was frustrating to deal with professionals like Ralph Nader who kept stimulating this sort of thing.
The credible accident of one nuclear power plant catastrophe would be 45,000 dead, well over 100,000 seriously injured, $17 billion worth of property damage, and an area the size of Pennsylvania contaminated.
There were some nuclear scientists and engineers who helped this opposition. We had two marvelous General Electric engineers who quit and became whistleblowers.
I testified on the NRC's quality assurance program that the quality assurance on a toaster is greater than that for the instruments that control a nuclear power plant.
On the other hand, there was inadvertent support. The very pro-nuclear director of the Oak Ridge National Lab, Alvin Weinberg, always harbored concerns. He thought that there shouldn't be one nuclear plant here and one nuclear plant there, that it would be better if we had 6 in one nuclear reservation so that you could use what he called the small number of very competent scientists and engineers to manage it. He knew what the risks were. But at one time, he said to me, you know what you're asking all of us nuclear scientists and engineers to do, Ralph? And I said, what? He said, to give up a lifetime of knowledge and their career, and that's very hard to do.
But just as the opposition was growing in confidence, global events suddenly made nuclear power look a whole lot more appealing.
In 1973, the big Middle East producers cut off oil shipments to major consuming countries. When the embargo was lifted, the price of foreign oil had jumped from $3 to $12 a barrel, 4 times higher than before.
This nation, in 1980, can have all the energy we need. Now, don't write an editorial on this. You're really going to catch it from your readers if you do, because it scares people. Nuclear power. They think of the bomb. They think of the possibility that one of them's going to blow up. My house in San Clemente is just 12 miles from the Southern California Edison Company's nuclear power plant. It's safe. It produces good power. It's clean power. And the United States, which first found the secret of the atom, is behind where it ought to be in the development of nuclear power.
Nixon proposed a huge expansion of nuclear power in the name of getting America out from under the boot of OPEC.
But even Nixon's support couldn't disguise one rather pressing problem.
It became clear very quickly that the turnkey orders were horribly underpriced.
The cost of every reactor and the nuclear power plant surrounding it, those costs were doubling every 2 years. Doubled, and then it doubled again.
As the cost of building reactors went up and up and up, they just couldn't afford it. It became untenable.
The Americans may have been wondering if they could afford to expand their nuclear power program, but across the Atlantic, the French couldn't afford not to.